Okay, brilliant. Well, welcome everybody to this masterclass all about quick and easy blogging, which is hopefully what everybody is here for. If everybody is not here for that, then let me know. Obviously, we've got a number of people who are here live. So if you're live, I'm going to ask questions. Please answer in the chat. I've got the chat box open so that I can see that. And then I will, obviously, if you are watching on replay, then feel free to message me separately, and we can. Whoops! Hold on a moment. Just admit this extra person. Sorry about this. I'm just trying to admit people at the same time as running the class. This is why you should always have somebody else to help you, is my understanding. Let me just admit these people. Okay. So, right. Start again. I think I'm going to. Yes, so please answer in the chat if I ask a question. There's so many more people joining live than I was expecting. First of all, I'm just going to give a very brief introduction for those people who don't know me. My name is Marie and I run Beyond the Kitchen Table. Next time, I'm definitely going to get somebody to help me with this. I help small business build websites, and basically websites that they love and websites which help them get more customers with less effort. As part of that, to my mind, blogging is a big part of that, because certainly I have found that obviously I blog on my own website, and I have seen the impact that my more successful posts have had. And I think there is a key there, which is not every post is going to hit the mark, and that's fine. But I noticed even this morning, I looked at about 10 o'clock this morning, and there was, I'd already had a couple of views on a blog post that I wrote. First of all, I actually wrote about 18 months ago, and then I updated it last year. So, I don't know, who those people were, but whether they were people coming back to my websites, or whether they were people who were had been to my website before, it doesn't really matter. But the reality is, I'm still getting traffic from those blog posts. So let me just let a couple more people in. No, it's not going to let me do that. Okay, so I haven't always built websites. I did a business degree. I worked in finance. I spent 19 years working in the city. And then I quit in 2012. I set up my own business selling locally made goods. And as part of that, I eventually made candles. And I've been building websites since about 2015. I'm originally self-taught. I followed along with YouTube videos when I built my own website, but then subsequently I've undertaken an awful lot of training. But we're not here to talk about me this morning. We're here to help you with your blog post. And I'd love to know in the chat how many blog posts you wrote last year, or you think you wrote, and what stopped you from writing more. Okay, so none, 2, none, 5. Well done, Ella. 2, 3. Okay, so thinking about what to blog about, time, finding the right topic, mental block, too busy, content ideas, time. Jane was doing one a week. Well done, Jane. But then time. It's very difficult to be consistent, Zoe. Absolutely right. Definitely right. And, and even I find I do them in fits and starts. I have become a little bit more consistent, but even I have found I have done them in fits and starts. So And I think the other question I have for you is how much you actually enjoy writing blog posts. On a scale of 1 to 10, if 1 is absolutely hate them, too scared to start, and 10 is really love writing them, where you think you are on the scale of 1 to 10. We've got quite a polarization here. I think there was a 5 there, but there's a couple of 1s and 2s, and then there's a couple of 8s and 9s as well, and a 6 and 7. Okay. So the aim of today is to teach you how to write blog posts more quickly and easily so that you write more of them in 2021, and that is basically my aim. And let's hope we can get you there even by the middle of the year, that you write more than you perhaps did last year. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what to blog about. I'm going to talk about a system for writing blog posts quickly and easily. I'm going to talk about titles, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about SEO. That will actually probably fall within writing them. Feel free to ask questions as we go. Also, at the end, I will leave time for any questions. So the first thing is how to come up with ideas for a blog post. And I know a lot of people said that they struggle with ideas. Now, we've sort of changed, I think, with the advent of social media and the fact social media posts are so quick and so easy to write. And I think if you look back a few years ago, people used to blog about all sorts of things, pretty much in the same way that we do with social media posts now. A blog post could be very short or they could be much longer. And people used to blog about all sorts of things that they were interested in, as well as things that relate to their business. To me, the best blog posts now are ones that show your knowledge and which visitors or your target audience find useful. There is useful information within them. Blog posts can be a really, really good way to build your authority and to show people, people have generally got a choice when it comes to choosing somebody to provide whatever service or product it is that they're looking for. And it's often very difficult to distinguish between people, except potentially on price. And what we want as businesses to do is to move people away from distinguishing on price. We want to show that we're the right choice for them, not just the cheapest. And showing, your authority is a very good way to do that. And, I used the example in a blog post that I wrote recently about photographers, for example. Yes, if you're looking for a photographer, for example, a headshot photographer, we're all small businesses here, or branding photographer. And, you look on their websites and you've got loads of fantastic images. There is also, though, a distinction. If you went on somebody's website and you've got 4 or 5 to choose from, they've all got fantastic images. Yes, you could choose on price. You could look at their social media posts and see how relatable they are. But the other thing you can do is look at their blog. And if you've got a photographer that is writing about things like what to wear, different places that you can go for photography, those kind of things, you will think this person really knows what they're doing and feel a little bit more safe, if you like, in their hands, that they really know what they're doing, and it can be a real distinguishing factor. Let me just get my mouse back as well. So I think the best blog posts are those which actually are related to your business. So what you can do is you can break down your business. We've narrowed in our blog posts, if you like, to being related to our business. And what we want to do now is to actually broaden out within that target, if you like, the potential number of topics that we can blog about. And a really good way to do that is to break down your business. And you can break down your business in a number of different ways. You can break it down by product. You can break it down by time of year. And I'm going to go through this. You can break it down by client type. you can break it down by need, if you like, and the kind of things that they actually need. So let's go through a few examples of those. So for example, if you are a photographer, and I did think I've put this as being product, but actually you could argue that it's client as well. But if you're a photographer, you might offer, for example, weddings, you might offer other occasions, you might offer outdoor photography, you might offer studio photography, you might offer headshots, you might offer branding, you might offer corporate, you might offer events. There's lots of different things that you offer. And so whether you consider those clients or product types, is debatable. I know we've got Michelle here, with shutters. You've got, potentially different kinds of shutters made of, I don't know, different materials and things like that. If you're an accountant, we've got at least one accountant on here, then, the number of different products that you offer, again, and you may not offer all of these, obviously, but you've got things like bookkeeping, you've got accounts, you've got, incorporation, you've got tax, and you've got the interpretation of accounts. Some businesses might have different seasons which impact on how people look at their business and indeed the flows of their business. I know I certainly do. September is a big time for people approaching me about websites. It's very much the back to school, and businesses. I put down a few very obvious seasons here, depending upon what it is that you do. But even some of the businesses might have different seasons that you might not necessarily anticipate. So we've got a few people here who are in the interior sector, for example, and when people people look at interiors differently in the spring. Certainly during lockdown, probably people are looking at their four walls and seeing their interiors differently. But when it comes spring, when it comes summer, the lead up to Christmas, even back to school, these are, if you like, points in your business that you can hook blog posts on, and think about how you can break down your business in this way. Again, you might work with different types of people. You might work with, we've got a few people here in the health and wellness sector, and that probably applies particularly to them. If you're somebody who is dealing with people with hormone issues, for example, then obviously you've got differences between teenagers, younger women, older women, perimenopause, people going through the menopause, etc. So you might have different types of clients. So thinking about why somebody might need your services. Again, looking at effectively the types of clients, there are different times in people's lives or different things that happen to people, which might mean, again, that they need your services. And again, this is perhaps, the examples here are particularly relevant for the interiors business, but not just interiors, others as well. So the first exercise I'd like you to do is to think about your own business and just take one of those groups and look at, just see if you can write down a few different ways that you could potentially break down your business. When you're done, put in the chat, and if you want to share, put in the chat. If you're struggling, again, put it in the chat, and we'll see if we can help you out. And if you need a reminder, slide is there. It's by product, time of year, client type, need, or however you can break down your own product or service. Okay, brilliant. We've got some ideas coming through here. So Zoe, interior furnishing, yeah, types of people, absolutely, they're at different stages, and what they need from, you know, their own interior are all very, very different. Obviously, there's a lot of things which are common between them. So yeah, Fatma, a photographer, you know, absolutely. Katie's a florist, yeah, all the seasons. And Jane, yeah. Yeah, Michelle, time of year, keeping a house warm in winter and cool in summer. And I think like Zoe, you know, you've got people at different stages in their life as well. You know, you've got people who, you know, first time buyers. You've got people who are, you know, expecting a family. Val, yeah, client type of products, and I think also the different stages that clients are at obviously works for you, Val. Paula, stressful times. Yeah, Catherine, yeah, types of clients, you know, busy mums. Busy mums is a great one because they're, you know, there's a lot you can write for busy mums, mood issues, weight issues, yeah. Yeah, Ella, time of year, January is obviously very big for diets, but also I guess you've got the summer as well and celebrations. Yeah, yeah, Sherry, personal styling, dress for Zoom, dressing for work at home. And I think you've probably also got people at different, I don't know your business, your target client as well, but I guess you've got, you know, if you're dealing with mums, you've got people at different stages. So, you know, having a baby, going back to work, children getting older and wanting to refine their sense of style. Okay, brilliant. Is anybody struggling with that? Looks like we've got some fantastic ideas there, which is great. No? Okay, so, and each of those groups are looking for different types of information. There's obviously a lot of overlap between them, but they're looking for different information from you, or there's different information you can write for each of them. And the key thing to think about when you're writing blogs, because you're writing them for people to read, people are going to click on them and read them if there's information in there that they actually want. So the first thing is actually, you know, what questions do people ask you? And you probably find that you get asked the same questions over and over again. And I know, you know, I do. I get asked two particular questions. I get asked, how do you get to, or variations of this question, how do you get to page 1 of Google? And how long does it take to build a website? They are questions that people directly ask me. And obviously they are two topics that blog posts can be written about. So we're going to come on to, I'm going to get you to write a list of questions in a moment. But one of the key things is to think about what questions people ask you. And also, you know, what questions people should ask you. I used to get quite frustrated that people didn't ask me about the content on their website, about what they should put on their, you know, on their homepage and how they relate it to their target audience, etc. So, you know, think about what questions people should ask you as well. So the next exercise, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, is just to write down a list of questions that you get asked. Or that you wish people would ask you. But I'm talking here about things that aren't already on your website. So if you put price, I'm not talking about things like pricing, for example, if you've got that on your website, or, you know, something about you. I'm talking about things which aren't necessarily on your website. There might be a frequently asked questions section if you have that. But the kind of things that people in your target audience ask you, either before they work with you, whilst they're working with you, or even if it's just people that you know that are like your target audience. So I would imagine, we've got a number of health people on here. They probably get asked quite a lot about, the quickest, tips for losing weight or whatever. So, see if you can come up with a list of questions. See if you can come up with, I don't know, half a dozen questions that people ask you. You can, if you want to, relate it back to those different groups that we've also just done, because obviously there will be some questions which are common across the groups or across your products, but there will be some that will be distinct for each different type. Okay, we've got some good questions coming through here. Paula, absolutely. How long it will take for a particular muscle issue to go? And obviously we've got a lot of muscles in our bodies. So, you can write blog posts for lots of different muscles. How regular treatment should be. That's, another good one. Anything else I can be doing to help with, whatever particular issues people come to you with. And going back to the exercise we did a little bit earlier in terms of looking at different groups of people who come to you with different muscle issues. Yeah, Michelle, how much it will cost? I think as well, though, people will probably ask how much. I don't know. I would, as far as shutters are concerned, I would ask things like, how much light does it keep out? Do they work? Do they, keep out drafts? Those kind of things. Wood or MDF? Yeah. Is intuitive eating healthy if I can eat what I want? Why do I want a life coach anyway, Kim? Yeah. Yeah, really good. They are all the questions I would have. Stopping sugar cravings, staying motivated, tips for weight loss, reducing hot sweats. Not quite at that stage yet, but how do I get organised in the kitchen? Yeah, quick lunch ideas, I think, especially at the moment. Yeah, Zoe, some really good questions there. Upcycle jewellery, whether you make them, where do you source the materials from? Yeah, Claire, what to wear for a headshot session. I think there's a lot of things on, certainly, me being the target audience for you, and we've got Jane in here as well, and Fatma's a photographer. I don't know whether we've got any others at the moment, but there's a whole load of questions that very nervous women who are coming about headshots or branding photography. How do I look slimmer? How do I look confident on camera? Those kind of things. Yeah, Wendy, it's January, can you still do my tax return for self-assessment? But think about, I would imagine people have got a lot of questions about what kind of expenses are allowable. Is my website a tax allowable expense? Is branding photography sessions tax deductible expense? Yeah, Fatma, preparation for outfits pre-shoot. What kind of clothing works best? I would have thought, and also if there's a group of you, what kind of clothing should you all wear the same? Should you wear it different? Yeah, should I wear makeup? Should I wear my glasses? They're really good ones. Oh my God, Gemma. My absolute favourite question was, what happens if you die during the project? I'm not entirely sure that one is a good good one to blog about, but but maybe you can answer that in a slightly different way about continuity. Could be a fun one to do. Yeah, it could be, Ella. Okay, has anybody not got any questions that they ask? If you want to put in the chat if you haven't got anything. Okay, so we're starting with a list. Okay, this is giving you the beginnings of a list of blog post ideas, but we're not finished yet. We've got more. So, you know, a great way to get ideas is to go into groups where people who need your service go and listen to their concerns. Okay, oops, sorry, just go back up. So at the school gates, I don't go to the school gates anymore. My children are teenagers, but just listening to the mums there and some of the conversations that they had and some of the issues that they had. Now, there's an awful lot of chat about schools, particularly living in Kent and having the grammar school system, and you know what different schools were doing and which school might be best. Do I need a tutor? All of these kind of things, which obviously if you're in an educational area, then they are, you know, you can glean a lot of information from standing at the school gates. If you deal with parents of children with special needs, again, you know, seeking out groups of those people and just listening to what they say. But also, you know, groups of mums at school talk about all sorts of other things. They talk about a lot of, you know, issues with style. I can't find the right pair of boots, or do you think this goes with this? There's a lot of things that you can glean just by listening to people and what their concerns might be. So I know at the moment, actually physically going to places and listening to people's concerns is a bit more tricky, but there are places that you can go to online as well. So obviously you've got Facebook groups, you know, Facebook groups where your target audience hang out and just go and just read what kind of issues that they have and what kind of concerns that they have. Obviously, we talked about meetings or school gates, but, you know, physical meetings as well. You know, talking to people who are your target audience and not talking to them in a way that you are necessarily selling to them, or not in a way that you're selling to them at all, but just understanding what their concerns are. And the other good thing about listening to people is listening to the language that they actually use, the words that they use to describe their you know, concerns and issues. And obviously you've got Clubhouse now as well. So you can go in there and just listen in some rooms where people are talking about all sorts of different things in Clubhouse. So those that don't know, Clubhouse is a new-ish social media app which is audio only. So there's lots of rooms. It's like wandering into, I don't know, you know, a whole load of meetings. There's lots of rooms that you can generally join, and they talk about all sorts of, you know, different topics. I've only been in a couple so far, and they've been business related, but there's a lady I know who has ADHD, and she's, you know, she's run a couple of rooms on ADHD, and she's been into other rooms on ADHD. So you can go into groups where your target audience is likely to be and just listen to the kind of things that they are asking and the issues that they have. And I think the critical thing here is that going into those groups, this is not about selling, it's about listening. Now, there are other valuable sources as well. So you've got a website called answerthepublic.com. So I don't know whether anybody's been on there, but you can just type in a word and it will give you a whole load of questions around that kind of word. Obviously, you've got Google. So if you start to type a question into Google, it comes up with a whole list of alternatives. You know, that's another good source of potential material for blog posts. You've got what people are talking about on Twitter, what they're talking about on Facebook, on Instagram, etc. You've got Quora, and then, you know, finally, and I have deliberately put this as the last thing on the list, you know, you can go and look at your competitors or other people in your industry and see what they are writing about. Okay, so using all of those different sources, hopefully you can come up with a list of ideas that you can write about. And, you know, I highly recommend just going off and spending, I know it's difficult these days with homeschooling to get some time on your own, but just, away from your computer, just sit with, pad and paper and just literally brainstorm some ideas, and potentially say, go into some of those groups and listen to what people are saying as well. So once you've got ideas, the next thing to do is write. And I know, the issue with writing blog posts is one of time. The main piece of advice I can give you with blog posts is that done is better than perfect. Okay, because an imperfect blog post is going to do much more good for your business than one that is just sitting in your drafts. Okay, and I know because I still have a fair few in my drafts as well. The first stage, and there is a checklist in the workbook that I sent around. Don't worry about that now, but you can go back to this list. But it's very easy to get lost in the land of research. Okay, and I have done this historically as well. And I now limit my research to 10 to 15 minutes maximum. Because I know if I'm going to spend 3 hours doing research for a blog post, that is not going to be a quick and easy blog post. And it may be appropriate to write a blog on that particular issue, but I would put that in a separate bucket. Okay. What we are looking at here is getting out blog posts which are useful to your audience in a timely manner. If you're going to spend 3 hours researching something, or if you need to spend 3 hours researching something in order to write a blog post, that's not going to come out in a quick and timely manner. So that might be a supplemental one that you do. So choose blog topics, first of all, where your research is more limited and where you can do your research in 10 to 15 minutes. And sometimes you want to put in statistics. Sometimes you might want to look at, see what other people ideas other people have got about a particular issue. And that's fine, but don't get lost in the land of research. Okay, now, I think the light bulb moment for me when it came to writing blog posts easily is that pretty much any blog post idea has a list, okay? If it's how to make a particular recipe, then that's a list of steps. I'm going to ignore the, if you die during the project, should I wear makeup to a photography session? Okay, there's a whole list of pros and cons with that. So there are reasons why you might want to, and there are reasons why you might not want to. Okay, that is a list of points. Okay. Outdoor spaces, again, that's a list, a list of different places that you can consider for shoots. Preparation that need to be done for photography shoots, again, that's a list of preparation. It doesn't matter whether they're in order or not, it is a list of items. What to wear for a headshot session. Again, that's a list because it's not just one single thing that you can wear for a headshot session. And you might want to put in, as well as the things that you should wear, the things that you shouldn't wear. When it comes to things with upholstery, do you do blackout blinds? Well, obviously there's a yes or a no answer to that, but there's also a more involved answer, which is if the answer is yes, you can explain, why you do them, how you do them. And again, you're talking about a list. Sources of material for jewelry. Again, there's probably not just one source, you might look at the reasons why you choose those particular sources. Again, you're talking about a list. And so to me, one of the most important things when it comes to writing a blog post is making sure that you are down to a list of points. And in fact, that's usually the easiest part of writing a blog post, is just thinking about the points that you want to make, because it's not going to be posted if there's only one point. You need to break it down into more manageable chunks. So again here, if your question is why is something, then you've got a list of reasons. If you've got a how, then it's a list of steps. Even if you're comparing two things, and I did a blog post a while ago on different website builders, and I was looking at, whether you should use WordPress, Wix, Squarespace, etc. And I was comparing different features. So I was comparing obviously cost, I was comparing flexibility, comparing ease of use, comparing longevity. I can't remember the different points, but again, it was a list of features that I was comparing. So, that can come down to a list as well. This is the final exercise I'm going to make you do this morning. But what I want you to do is just take one of your blog post ideas that you've had from earlier and make a list of points, okay? I want you to make at least 3. Not asking you to write the blog post, but make a list of points. At least 3, and if you can make, 7, 9, 10, that kind of number, even better. But just write down a list of points under the blog post idea. And if you've got a list of points, then put them in the chat and share them. And if you're struggling with a list, again, put it in the chat so we can see if we can help you out. Yep, Kim, there's some good points here. Okay, Michelle, so think of one of the the blog post questions. So maybe let's step back and think about somebody might want to understand why you would have shutters rather than curtains, for example. And what you could do then is to make a list of points as to reasons why somebody would choose blinds versus curtains. So you might look at a number of different factors on those. You might look at the cost of each. You might look at style. And obviously style is a very personal thing, but you might say that shutters work particularly well in these types of homes. You might look at the length of time it takes. You might look at sustainability, those kind of issues. So maybe look at comparing a number of different things between the two. I don't know whether you get asked questions on the sustainability of shutters, but again, you can break that kind of question down into a list of points. So you can talk about, what they're made from, where the material comes from, whether it's replaced, the transport costs or the transport impact, the making them, how sustainable or eco, that is. Is that helping? Okay, good. So let me just see some more of these that we've got. Yeah, Fatma, that's really good, actually. And in terms of looking at outdoor family shoots, I love the one on emotional attachment. Yeah, the backdrop that people might want to consider. I guess they might want to consider the weather as well. Yeah, Kat, very great points in terms of tips for beating sugar cravings. Thank you, Rachel, helping out Michelle there as well. Yeah, why you need an intuitive eating counselor, good points. Yeah, Katie, and I think also, Katie, it's sometimes a case of stepping back and just thinking about why questions people ask, which are not just related to your own service, but actually, why order a party package rather than do it yourself? Might be the kind of question that people ask and that you can answer, in that particular way. And then you can weave into that your own setup and your own prices, but people will, they might search on Google for, whether they should, do their own party package or whether they should hire somebody else. That's a question I get asked as well. Or it's not a question I get asked very much, actually, but it's a big question in groups that I go into, whether I should build my own website or hire a professional. And it's a question actually probably applies to a lot of people here. Kim had it in terms of life coach, whether you hire a coach or whether you don't. You effectively do it yourself. We can all take our own family photographs. In our case, it's usually with grumpy looking people, which might be the reason that you hire a professional, because they're more likely to, your family is more likely to be cooperative. I was going to say we can probably make our own curtains. I certainly wouldn't attempt that myself. But, again, that's obviously there are people who are much more skilled with a sewing machine than I am who could make their own curtains. So why would you go to somebody like Zoe? And I think, a fundamental question we can all write a blog post about is basically why hire a professional when you can do it yourself? Because I'm trying to think whether of all the people I've got on here, I suspect that none of us are doing something that other people couldn't do themselves. Even if you're a hairdresser, I've been cutting my husband and my son's hairs since last March, not particularly well, and I'm very much looking forward to them going back to the barbers. But it's something you can do yourself, but you often choose to go to a professional. So probably doesn't apply to you so much, Michelle. I'm not sure many people would attempt to make their own shutters, but I think it applies to to most people as there is an idea of a blog post in terms of why you might do it yourself. Okay. Anybody else struggling in terms of coming up with a list for a blog post idea? No, nobody will admit to. Okay, let's move on then. So once you have got a list of points, you just need to flesh them out. Okay, and the next step in writing a blog post, so we've got an idea. In fact, hopefully we've got several ideas for blog posts. So we choose one and we make a list of points. We choose one. If we need to do any research, we do the research. Then we make the list of points. The next step is to write. And the key here is literally just to write. Don't think about editing it. This is a first draft, and it's so much easier to edit a first draft than it is to have a blank piece of paper. Now, I start with my writing with the points, okay? Don't start at the beginning. I start with the points, and I don't necessarily start with them in order either. Start with the easiest. So pretend that you're explaining it to somebody. If somebody asked you about, why they should have shutters rather than curtains, or, the sourcing of your materials, you would, and I'm not suggesting for a moment you tell them exactly where you get your materials from, but what you might consider when it comes to sourcing materials here, then just pretend you're explaining to somebody, pretend you're talking to somebody. And some people find it easier to write physically with a pen and piece of paper. Some people find it easier to type straight away, and others find it easier to talk. And whichever works for you. You can get dictation apps, and there is one that I'm not personally a fan of dictating it. I prefer to either physically write with pen and paper or to type, but I know a lot of people who do actually much prefer to dictate, and there's an app called Otter AI, where you get something like 600 minutes per month free, and you can literally just talk into the app. It will record you, and then it will send you back a transcript. Now, you've got to go back and ultimately edit that transcript, but it's a really good way, if you are uncomfortable writing, of literally just getting the points out in a way that sounds as if you're speaking. Yeah, notes on your phone can do that as well. And there are a couple of other apps as well. I think even things like Facebook has got a dictation thing on as well. And it's a good way of making lists, but you can also use it for writing blog posts. And this is another issue with regard to time. If you find it hard to sit down and find the time to write, then, if you're out on a walk, or a dog walk, or sat in the car waiting to pick somebody up, you've got your phone, you can just, dictate a couple of points, have a think about what points it might be that somebody might ask you, and just dictate a couple of them. And, you've got a paragraph or 2 paragraphs of your blog post written. Now, the more points you have, the shorter each can be. So, if you've got 7 points, then, writing 50 to 100 words per point, and that is only a few sentences. I think I get about 10 words on a line. So, you're talking, 2 paragraphs if you're at 100 words, or maybe 3 short paragraphs. Then, writing a short amount on each point is so much easier than writing a massive blog post. And that's all you're doing. You're breaking this down into, you're breaking down the elephant into much more manageable bites. And I will start with the points because I find those the easiest to write. I can usually, if I've got a list of points, I can usually think immediately what to write for 3 or 4 of them. And once you get going, it's much easier to write the other ones as well. Once I've got the points all written, and I say we're talking here, it's first draft, so we're not editing, you're just writing as you go. And I don't know whether I put it on there. I put it in the workbook. Don't spend any, give yourself maximum 30 minutes if you're doing this in one go, to write your first draft. This is, say we are looking for, we're looking for good blog posts, but done is definitely better than perfect. We're not looking to agonize for hours over these. And then I suggest you write the introduction next. And we talked here a lot about what some of the blog post ideas might be. And I think you can start with a question, or you can start with a statement. And the key with an introduction is not to stress about it. Keep it short. I've just written a blog post about blog post titles. And I think I started with a statement about magazine titles, about how you choose a magazine, whether to buy a magazine, or if you're online, whether to click on a magazine based upon the titles on the cover. That's a statement. And then I've gone on to relate it to blog post titles. You can start with a question. For example, should I wear makeup on a photo shoot? There are, or you could start with a statement to say there are pros and cons. And then basically what you're doing is the final sentence on the introduction is basically saying, this is what I think. So keep your introduction short. Again, a few sentences is all that you need in there. 50 words is absolutely fine for an introduction. We want to get people onto the main points that we're talking about. And once you're done, write the conclusion. I was told that people I think one of the important things to realise with blog posts is people scan them. They don't read every single word. And I was told that what people often do is they will not read the introduction, they will scan the points and they'll read the conclusion. So what I try and do when I write the conclusion is actually give the main points of the post. And what people will do, if they find the conclusion interesting enough, they'll then go back and read from the start properly, which is quite an interesting way of looking at it. And I keep meaning to look and see whether that's something that I actually do. But what you want to do is get across the whole gist of the post that you have written. So if you are comparing two things like shutters and curtains, for example, then you're going to conclude by saying, you know, it's a personal choice, or I think shutters are better because, and then you're going to list some of the points why they are better. And you're not going to repeat every single thing that you said above, but you're going to pick out what the main reasons are and maybe a very slight explanation of them. You know, and again, you're talking 50 to 100 words for a conclusion. You're not talking about writing a huge amount. And importantly, within the conclusion, you need a call to action. You need to let people know what they should do next. Oh, that's good, Kim. So Kim does that with long text. Okay, so you're verifying what I've heard then in terms of people going to the conclusion before they actually read it. But yeah, in the conclusion, you should have a call to action, what somebody should do next. So, you know, it may be as simple as, you know, if you are interested in shutters, you can find out more about about the different types of shutters we offer here, and then link to a page on your website where you've got your services. And I don't believe that you should necessarily use your blog post to sell, but what you are doing is you are leading them to another part of your website where they can find out more, and that's where you would actually potentially, you know, that's where you sell and convert somebody. So, you know, it may be that somebody who is, you know, looking to understand whether they should wear makeup to a photo shoot or not, you know, if they're not local to you, then they're probably not going to be interested in booking you. But that doesn't matter. You're still getting traffic to your website, and that helps build up more traffic, some of which will obviously be local. So, you know, somebody who might get to the end of a post like that, you know, and the CTA is saying, you know, you could find out more about my headshot photography on my services page and link to your services page, then you're going to get some people who will link through to it and some people who won't, and that's fine. But you should always have a call to action at the end of your post. Okay. Yeah, Rachel, sometimes write the conclusion first, so it keeps my blog post on track when I'm drafting it. Yeah, and to be honest, I think writing the points down is pretty much that, because you might not have every single one of those points in your conclusion, but you're actually going to have quite a number of the points that are in your conclusion are going to be on your list as well, and your list might have slightly more. So yeah, I agree with that. Okay, is there an ideal length for a blog? So when I have looked, most of my blog posts end up being about 700 words to 1,000 words, and I think that is pretty standard. Google struggles with anything less than 300 words to understand what's actually in there, and so I would say as a minimum try and get 300 words, but the reality is a short blog post is better than no blog post. The longer your blog post is, the more likely Google is to rank it higher. Now, there are lots of factors, and I know, Ellie, obviously you did the SEO Masterclass, but there are lots of factors that Google takes into account. And if people are only clicking on it and then clicking off again because it's too long and dull, then that's not going to work either. But Google generally prefers longer posts. It thinks there's more information in there, and therefore it's likely to be more relevant. So, you know, an occasional very long blog post is actually quite a good tactic. But I would say, you know, probably keep them, make sure they stay relevant. I think that's the key thing with regard to length. If you've got lots and lots to say, you can write longer, but often it's better in that case to split it up into 2 blog posts and to link them. So, you know, you can say if you want to know more about this particular area, then you're linking to another blog post in there. So hope that helps, Ella. Sorry, it's not a clear thing, but it's basically long enough that it's at least 300 words, and basically keep it relevant. So don't make it too long, just for the sake of making it longer. I think once you have actually written, so we've written our points, we've fleshed out the points, we've written our introduction, we've written our conclusion. Sometimes I write the conclusion before the introduction. Then go back and edit it. And I often find it helpful, actually, if you can, to leave it a day before I edit it. So that very first go should be taking 45 minutes. And then go back and edit. And sometimes I look and I think, crikey, what was I thinking of when I was writing this? But you will find there will be chunks of it where you've got your flow that actually are pretty good. And it may be just some of the points where you're struggling to get your flow, that you need to go back and rewrite. But it's so much easier to edit something than it is to start from scratch. So I was, go back and edit. And even if you, have felt that the first writing of it was fine, still leave it a while and go back and reread it, and just check that you're happy with it. Somebody I follow was talking about the rule of 3, that you shouldn't revisit any piece of content more than 3 times. And again, this is going back to the done is better than perfect. It's very easy to think, I'm not quite happy about it, I'll leave it and I'll look at it again tomorrow. No, if you're only going to look at it 3 times, so that's the time you write it, time you edit it, and one final time before you publish it, then you're going to be much more focused on actually making sure that it's something that is, good enough to put out there. Do I get other people to read it too? I don't tend to be honest, for a blog post. You can do. If there's somebody, a buddy that is happy to read your blog posts, or indeed if you want to swap with somebody else, whereby you read each other's. I think it depends upon how confident you are with the writing. If you struggle with particularly spelling and grammar, it's a good idea to get somebody to proofread it. Sales page would be different. I'd be inclined to get somebody to read a sales page for me, but probably not a blog post. Links. If you're on the SEO course, links are important. Links are important when they're coming. People are linking to your website, but you also want links in your blog posts, both external links and also internal links. So external links are where you link to something that is not on your website. So if you're quoting a statistic, for example, then that's an outbound link. Question I get asked is, or question you might have is, aren't you sending people off your website if you're linking to other people's websites? I always set those links to open in a new page so that your website is still open on their computer, as well as potentially the new page they're going to. Most people will not click on those kind of links. But Google likes links, basically. That is how Google finds different pages on a website. It's like a spider crawling, and those links are tunnels or they're roads linking different websites. And so Google likes links which are between different websites. So that's a reason to put them in. And I say I wouldn't necessarily link to one of your competitors necessarily, but I wouldn't worry about linking to particularly source material. So if you are in the interiors business, for example, and you're talking about a particular type of fabric or that you might use, then putting a link into their website is a good idea. So if you're quoting any statistics, obviously you should link back to those, or just quoting anybody, then giving them credit. The other thing that you should do is add links that are internal as well. So we talked in terms of the CTA within your blog post about linking potentially to one of your services pages. So obviously that is an internal link. linking to other blog posts which might be relevant as well. So you might mention that you've written, you might refer to a particular subject within your blog post, and then that might be a subject that you've written a blog about. You can just link straight to that. You don't necessarily need to say, you can read this blog post here. You can just literally, where you've talked about the blog post, take a relevant piece of text and hyperlink that piece of text. So, adding a couple of external links and a couple of internal links is good practice. So I do that once I've actually written the post. I come back and I add links, and sometimes I might actually need to add another sentence in order to incorporate a link, and that's fine. Adding images next as well. Blog posts, you don't have to have images in blog posts, and sometimes it's appropriate not to have images depending upon what you're blogging about. I always add images. I normally add 3 or 4. And sometimes they're my own images. Obviously, they are the best kind of images to add in there. I've got a few photographers in the group here who I'm sure will agree with me. But then, particularly for blog posts, I'm a real fan of branding photography. So using your own images on your website generally. But on blog posts, I'm not quite so precious about it. And I usually use images. I personally use images from Canva a lot. Partly because I have the pro version, so they are all included in my package. But then you've also got a couple of other free image sites. So pixels.com, sorry, that should be pexels.com, P-E-X-E-L-S. Pixabay and Unsplash are 3 particular favourites of mine, and as a fan of Unsplash as well. You can, and the good thing about using those is they are licensed for commercial use on your website. You can't necessarily get a t-shirt printed with that image on, or a mug or something like that, and sell it. You're generally not licensed for that kind of thing on there, but you can use them on your website. Never ever just download an image from Google that you particularly like to add to your blog post, because they are generally not licensed for that purposes. Occasionally they are. Do I link pictures to anything? Not usually, to be honest, Ella, but I do make sure, and it's one of the issues for SEO, I do make sure that I put an alt text within them so that they're effectively, well, they're titled and have an alt text, but I will come on to that. How can you check if an image is licensed? If Pixels, Pixabay, Unsplash are all licensed, and I believe Canva is as well, but you can just look at the terms of use under those. You can on Google, if you go onto Google and then click on images, there is, and I can't remember exactly how you get to, I think it's tools or usage. You can get a drop down there, and one of them is the kind of license for which those images can be used. Whenever I have done that, the number of images shown on the page shrinks considerably, and I often find actually there's not much there that is useful. So particularly if you are looking for an image of a celebrity, which is something that I have done before, which might be appropriate in a blog post. If you Google that person's name, go onto images, and then on the toolbar at the top, it's something like usage, and click on that. You can see which ones are licensed for commercial use. And I usually find there's actually nothing, which is why I tend to revert to these 4 that I've got here. Okay. Next is so we've written it, we've edited it, we have added links and images, and then is to go through an SEO checklist. I've included the SEO checklist in the workbook. I will also, when I send around the recording, the workbook will be attached to that as well. And it's the same checklist that was in the SEO Masterclass before Christmas. So the first thing to think about is, if somebody is searching for that kind of post, what might they be searching for? And some people, when they write blog posts, you might be surprised that I didn't start off with keywords, and that's because I believe that blog posts should be what your target audience wants to read about, rather than being driven by keywords. But having worked out what your target audience wants to read about and having written it, it's useful to think about, okay, what kind of keywords might be appropriate if somebody was searching. Okay, so think about that. Then look at the URL. The URL is the website address. So my blog posts are beyondthekitchentable.co.uk/ and then something that is related to the blog post. Most websites allow you to specify what that text is. It is after the slash. So you want to make sure your keywords are in. It will usually, well, it will default to one of two things. It will default to a random set of numbers. You do not want that. Or it will default to the title. And the title is fine, but sometimes I take out some superfluous words that are within the title, particularly things like the, and just put sort of a shortened version of the title within that. Yeah, so word hyphen word. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. The website domains never have spaces in them. They always use a dash between words to denote a space. And note, it should be a dash and not a, I don't know what it's called, like an underscore instead, or anything else. But the Google understands dashes to mean spaces. Okay, so we've got, so you've got the website address, which again, should contain keywords. It's basically the title and making sure you've got the keywords in the title and in the URL. Looking at subheadings. So to me, my subheadings are always the points that I am making. And so the one I did on blog post titles, which I did at the weekend or completed at the weekend, when I looked, I think the keywords I was looking for was blog post titles. That's key phrase, obviously, rather than single word. And that was in my URL. It was in my title, and therefore in the main heading. But it wasn't in any of the subheadings. So what I did was actually I looked at my subheadings. I thought, you know what, I can very easily add it to 2 of those. I can't remember how many points I had. I think I had 10 on that particular post. So I just added it into 2 of them, and it made no difference to the readability. It made no difference to the to anything else. But what it did do was give me the opportunity to put the keywords within the subheadings. And then I put here at the bottom alt text. So that is the where you have images within your website, you can put an alternative of text, so that if there are people with accessibility issues, or if the image can't be read for some reason, then it will put the text in. Google cannot read images, but it can read the alternative text. Again, you shouldn't just shoehorn in your keywords, but what you can do is you can often put it in 1 or 2. So again, the post that I finished at the weekend, when I looked at the various different images that I had used, I tended to make sure I used at least one word of the 3, or I used related phrases for the alt text. So the first one was a stack of magazine covers. So I can't remember what I actually put for the alt text, but it was probably something like magazine titles or something like that. So I was using the word titles in there. Okay, Jane, I'm not planning another SEO workshop, but you can still buy the recording of the workshop that I did before Christmas. So if anybody else is interested in that, let me know. It's on my website actually. You can just go and buy it, and you get it straight away. Okay, once you've done all of that, it's a case of having a final read through. Make sure you're happy with it. Just obviously check for spellings as well. I'm not quite so concerned about grammar, because blog posts are not necessarily written in entirely, like the rest of your website, like in an entirely, proper English way. So obviously, glaring grammatical errors, yes, but, I don't care about sentences starting with and but and all the other things that my English teacher told me that I should not start with. Okay, Claire, can you give an example of what are the keywords for a particular blog post? So going back to the example of makeup for branding photography, so you would probably have the keywords makeup, branding, photography. That's 4 keywords which together are a phrase that people might search for, and they might search for it in different order. So it might be the question that people would type into Google would be, should I wear makeup for a branding photography shoot? But they might do the other way around, branding photography, should I wear makeup? But Google can distinguish between that, so don't worry too much about necessarily the order of the words, but that key phrase, the 2 parts of that key phrase are, makeup and branding photography. Then obviously, once you've had your final read through, publish it. Okay, some people like to schedule posts so they come out a particular day of the week or a particular time. Others just do it as and when. But the key thing is to make sure you publish it. Don't sit on it, publish it. Or at least schedule it to be published if you want to tie it into a particular event. And then promote it as well. And the next workshop I'm going to do, the next masterclass I'm going to do is going to be about using social media to connect with people, and a particular part of that is going to be using the blog posts that you have written and promoting both the blog posts and using the content within the blog post to generally work for your business through social media. But people won't just stumble on your blog post. That's not true, because people will do through Google. But what you want to do is initially use it to, drive some traffic to your website, let people know that you have published this post. And it's not just a case of saying, oh, here's my latest blog post. You can use some of the material from within your blog post to actually promote it and then link to the blog post as well. Okay, before I go into titles, any more questions about the actual writing of the blog posts? Are you feeling more confident about actually writing them and writing them quickly? Yes, excellent, Fatma. I can see Sherry nodding as well. Excellent. Anybody not feeling more confident? We have to remember our English teachers from school are not the people who are going to be reading these and marking them. They're going to be read by people who actually want help with, whatever it is that you do. Okay, so points, Michelle. We'll come back to the points at the end. So anybody else who's stuck with points or indeed anything else? Okay, titles. Now, titles make the difference between a blog post being read and a blog post not being read. That's not always entirely true, because if you're promoting it, for example, through social media, then somebody is probably going to decide whether to click on it by the description that you've given in the social media post. And some people will like your blog posts and they will regularly read them. You might link to it in a newsletter, and so people will find out about it that way, and they will choose whether to click on it or not. But to somebody who is new to you, then actually the title will make the difference. And certainly if it's something that's been found through Google, then the title is going to make the difference between whether somebody clicks on it or not. I probably should have put the post in here that I had, slide in here that I had on the SEO workshop, showing you the search results that came up for a particular term, and you could see the titles and you could see a short description underneath. Because if somebody is searching, for example, for post that I come up highly on is about putting prices on your website, So if somebody's searching, you know, should I put prices on my website? And they've got, you know, first page of Google is 8 different articles, all, you know, stating whether they should put prices on their website or not. People will decide whether to click or not, depending upon potentially whether they've come across that business before. And secondly, the where the article comes in the ranks, so they're more likely to click on the ones at the top than the ones at the bottom. But thirdly, by the title, and that makes a big difference. And your title has one single job, which is for somebody to click and read the article. Okay, and it's very much like magazine covers in a newsagent. And we can take inspiration from magazine titles, and it's sometimes a good thing to do is to pick up a magazine that your target audience might read. It's always a good excuse to pick up a magazine, and just look at the titles that they use. And one of the things that you'll find is that depending upon the target audience, the kind of titles are different. The topics are also different as well, and sometimes it might be the same kind of an idea, but the other side of the coin. So, you know, writing about sustainability or eco might be different in, I don't know, Woman and Home to Cosmopolitan, for example, because their target audiences are different, may overlap a little bit, but they are different and they have slightly different focuses. And the titles will certainly reflect that, and obviously some of the points in the articles as well. Now, the first thing, I do not believe in clickbait at all. So clearly your title needs to relate to the post that you have written. That's the first rule. And it needs to show somebody how you are solving a problem. So I've talked about this in terms of the magazine articles, in terms of using language that your target audience would use. But if we go very back to 40 minutes ago to when we were talking about listening to what people are saying and the issues that they have and the questions that they have, you know, the mums at the school gate, they're expressing their concerns and their questions using particular language. And it's very useful to pick up that kind of language and reflect it back in titles and indeed in parts of the blog post as well. Your titles should promise one thing. So anybody who has read my blog post on blog post titles, then I talked about, you know, the title, which Take That Star Are You Going to Marry? Now that's, okay, probably showing my age for a start, but, and it's not something I might click on now still, you never know. But, you know, which Take That Star Are You Going to Marry? What they each have for breakfast, what their star signs are, and what colour shoes they wear is not a clickable blog post title, okay? Just one thing, okay? Your article might talk about all of those different things, but you are just focusing on one thing in terms of your blog post title, because it's just much more clickable than a whole train of things. You don't want to tell them everything within the title. So in terms of ideas for blog post titles, you know, hitting on their pain, that sounds very cruel, and I don't mean it to be, but people have particular issues. And so, you know, if you particularly focus on the issue that they might have, that is going to be, they're much more likely to read the article than if you don't. You know, quick win, suggest they're doing something wrong, turn it around. So what do I mean by that? So quick win. So, you know, those of us at homeschooling, trying to work, time is very, very short. So, you know, 5 quick lunch ideas is the kind of thing that, you know, somebody like Kat could write about very easily, that people would want to read, because, you know, it's focusing on our pain, which is lunch. Oh my God, you know, everybody's at home, you know, they've got to be fed at least 3 times a day. And it's hard enough sometimes thinking about what to feed them in an evening. Need to feed them at lunch. So that's my pain, is I need to feed them lunch. Although in my house, it's help yourself. And, you know, quickly, people want things quickly. People want things easily. suggested doing something wrong. Are you making, these 5 mistakes on your website, or the five mistakes most people make on their website? The fact that you might be making a mistake, again, is quite compelling to click on that kind of a title, because people want the quick and easy changes they can make. Why you shouldn't eat bananas for breakfast. I have no idea whether you should eat bananas for breakfast or not, but oh, I'm eating bananas for breakfast, maybe I shouldn't. Those kind of things, again, suggesting that people can make one quick and easy change, which will, transform, what they're doing. I put here, turn it around. So I probably tricked a number of you with my blog post title, 4 reasons you shouldn't put prices on your website. And actually these were, 4 reasons that people say why they are afraid to put their prices on their website. And I debunked all of them and came to the conclusion that you should put prices on your website, usually anyway. And I turned it around. I turned around, the blog post was obviously turned around as well, but so was the title. And when I have looked, if I type into Google, should I put prices on my website? In a, why you should or should you, I'm the only one that says you shouldn't, which makes me stand out because I have turned it around. And it's not something that you can do all the time, but you can do, from time to time. Some more ideas. Suggest a secret. So the blog post I wrote at the weekend was the secret to killer blog post titles. Because we all want to know what the secret is. We all want to know what is different and what we're doing wrong. Again, what we can do differently. And the idea that something might be a secret is obviously it makes people want to read. We all want to know what the gossip is. We all want to know what the secret is. Asking a question is obviously the very easy option. Why you need to do this, and using lists as well. So, for example, 7 easy ways to, whatever it might be, is very good idea. And one trick you can use with this, which I fall for every single time, is, hashtag number 3 will surprise you. There was on social media, there was, see what these EastEnders stars look like today. You'll never believe what Michelle Tully looks like. I never watch EastEnders. I never have done. I know who Michelle Tully is, but I clicked on the article because I wanted to know what she looked like, because there was a suggestion in there that there was a secret, that that was something different I really needed to know. But using lists, using secrets, those kind of things are are great. In the workbook, there is a list of 40 headlines that you can actually use, just filling in the blank. I think I've used probably the, there's a number of different lists in there. Sometimes you might want to, change some of the wording a little bit, but there are 40 different ideas within that that you can use. And just for some of the blog post ideas that we're talking about, every single blog post idea we have talked about, you could probably use about 10 of those titles in there, and it's just a case of finding which one you like the most or think is most appropriate. And try different ones for different kind of blog posts. Don't always use 7 easy ways to do this, 7 easy ways to do that, 7 easy ways to do the other. While I'm on the topic of numbered lists, one hint, which is apparently odd numbered lists are clicked on more often than even numbered. And it's a psychological thing. If there is 10 ways to do something, apparently people psychologically think there aren't 10 ways to do that. It's probably that there are 7 ways or 9 ways or 11 ways. So somebody has just added in a couple of sort of dummy ones in order to get the list to 10. Whereas actually, if you say, 7 ways, people think they are 7 good ways, or, 23, or some just strange number, people are more likely to click on that. So the research points to than they are on an even number. So, any questions on titles? Yeah, same price of £99 sells more than 100. And I've heard even things ending in a 7 as well. Although I don't know whether people have picked up on that these days. Any questions on titles? Now, I think the key thing is, just use the list with titles and just try out a couple of different ones and, see whether particular ones work for your audience. Okay. So, just to conclude, yes, 7 is good, Zoe. To conclude, base blog posts on what your target audience wants to know. And I can't state that enough, okay? Park keywords, focus on what your target audience wants to know. And the way to do that is to listen to what they ask, or use some of the other sources I've mentioned, like Ask the Public and Google, etc. But first of all, you should be listening to what people actually ask. And the key to writing posts quickly and easily is to start with a list and then just write. Don't worry about how it sounds. Just write or dictate or whatever works for you. Okay, then you can go back and edit it, and then you can go back and add links, images, SEO, etc. So, in terms of actions, come up with a list of blog post ideas. That's the first action. And I have put as a second point, consider a reasonable schedule for them. So some people can blog every week. Some people blog every day. That doesn't work for most people. Every week might not, but if it's every fortnight or even once a month, but come up with some kind of schedule for your blog posts, and make sure it's something that you can actually meet. Because being consistent with blog posts, like anything else, is going to be better for generating traffic to your website and building your authority. Okay, and then just start writing them. That's the key to getting them done is to start. And obviously remember that done is better than perfect. People scan blog posts like they scan most material on your website, and indeed anywhere else as well. And finally, don't forget to promote your blog posts as well. If you want more, a couple of things. Last time I ran what I called a take action session after the SEO masterclass, and I'm going to run another one next Tuesday, same time as this, 11 o'clock. So if anybody would like to come and join that, and the idea behind that is 45 minutes just on a Zoom like this, and you just sit and write your blog post, or come up with ideas if that's how you want to spend the 45 minutes for different posts, or start with your list. And then at the end of 45 minutes, we can all have a chat about how we've got on and what we have achieved. And obviously the idea is to do that without distractions. I'm not teaching anything on that, but I will be there. And if you've got questions that you want to ask in the chat, then during those 45 minutes, then I will answer them. So it's basically also time that you can just ask me any questions that you have got. I'm going to run another masterclass next month, so the last Tuesday in February, which I've termed social media content. And there are 2 parts to that. The first part is basically taking your blog post and repurposing what you have done into social media posts. And each blog post, I reckon I can get about 10 to 20 social media posts out of it for each of Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, probably slightly fewer, probably at the lower end for Instagram, but using the images and using the text that we put on the blog posts, also Pinterest. I've started to do reels with some of mine. So just repurposing the content into social media content. So that's basically half of it is to show you how to repurpose the blog post. And then the other half of it, we'll talk about other forms of social media content that get people engaged, get your target audience engaged, and also for selling. So that's next month. The price of that will be £39 again, and I will be running an early bird of £29. But for those of you who've bought this class, then you have a week to get that for the price of £19, and that's the lowest price that this class will be offered for, certainly live. So if you want to take me up on that offer, I will email round the link to that when I send round the recording of this, but you can also message me, because I actually have the page up now, so that you can book that. You can book that today. Basically, and that's obviously how else you can find me. It was pointed out last time that I really need to sort out my LinkedIn link, because anybody who can remember that string of numbers is doing pretty well. But any questions? Well, two things. First of all, any questions? And secondly, are you feeling more confident about writing blog posts? And are you going to write more in 2021? So Emma's got her blogging mojo restored. Okay, good. You people have got it. Dash and yeah, Michelle, we'll recap on the points. So going back to thinking about the nothing, Rachel's needing to curb her excessive research habit. Going back to thinking about the points that you could write about, it's a case of thinking first and foremost about breaking down your product into the different kinds of things that people might want to the sort of components. So one of the things with shutters, I guess, is that different times of year, people's different stages of life, and different reasons that people might want to have shutters. So for me, in terms of ideas for blog posts for shutters, you've got things like shutters or curtains, pros and cons of each. So you can write a blog post upon that. You can write blog posts on things like the materials that are shutters sustainable, or something to do with the sustainability, the materials, the eco side of shutters. And that's something which I would imagine your audience is very interested in. What your shutters are made of and how you source your materials. Not necessarily exactly where you source your materials. People don't need to know your suppliers, but what you consider when you are looking at suppliers. And I think anybody who has product-based business, actually, or we've got massage therapists, the oils and things that you use, people are interested to know how you decide on who supplies you and what factors you take into account. And obviously you want this to be, a positive thing. So it's not, well, I decide on who's the cheapest, but it's, you might want to take into account the, you might try and use local people. You take into account the ecology. You take into account how properly they can supply you, because that kind of thing is important to customers as well. And actually, we've got photographers in the group. Your prints, people would be interested to understand how you source materials for your prints, how you decide who is going to print your calendars, for example, might be something that, for example, Jane might want to blog about. Yeah, you've got your sources, why shutters? Then you've got potentially shutters fitting into different kinds of properties. So, shutters in, I don't know, period homes, shutters in I live in a 1920s house, so, you know, shutters in 1920s houses, shutters in modern houses, shutters in Victorian houses, you know, perhaps thinking about some of the kinds of homes that you fitted them in. Do shutters work in awkward shaped windows? I'd only write about that one if the answer was yes. But I know certainly a friend of mine who was having a real struggle some years ago because she had a, you know, a triangular, a pointed window in her bedroom because it's in the roof. Yeah, that's a great idea, Rachel. Allergy and health benefits of using shutters and over curtains. So you can write about, you know, just the health benefits of shutters. Yeah, anybody else who has got any ideas for blog posts about shutters, matching your shutters to your colour scheme. What else have we got? Shutters in a nursery, in a child's bedroom. You know, shutters. You know, something about seasons with shutters to spring, shutters for winter. Yeah, blackouts. Do shutters let in light, or are they blackout? Yeah, so that's another one. Shutters on downstairs rooms as well. Does that give you some ideas, Michelle? It's sometimes, and actually sometimes just having a brainstorm with somebody else is actually, you know, quite helpful to do. If anybody else is getting stuck on points, come and join me next Tuesday, and you know, in the chat we can go through some ideas and points as well. You know, it's see if we can help each other. And if you're in the Facebook group as well, I know the Facebook group is not particularly active, but ask in there, and again I will respond in there. Has anybody else got any questions? How are we doing on time? A little over time. Any more questions? Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I will be sending the recording around before the end of the week. And it'll be great to see as many of you next Tuesday, and also for the next masterclass in a month, if you'd like to join that as well. Thank you very much.